Shabbat Shalom, Chanukah Sameach. Maimonides teaches us about different levels of giving. And towards the top of his outline is the idea of anonymity. How do we give in a way that is pretty anonymous? And I want to tell you a story that actually pushes back on this idea of giving in this way. The Talmud tells a tale about a man named Mar Ukba, and every day Mar Ukba would slip 4 coins under the door of a needy person. And one day Mar Ukba's wife came to visit him, and he was late. He was late to giving those 4 coins to that poor person. So when he finally gets to doing it, the person behind the door opens the door and starts running after Mar Ukba and his wife. And they run away. They want to keep the anonymity between themselves and the person to whom they're giving. So they're running from the person, and they find themselves running into a fiery furnace. And Mar Ukba's legs are becoming singed by the fire. But his wife's feet are okay. And Mar Ukba is devastated. He says, "How is it that you are on a higher spiritual level than I am, that your feet are being saved from this fire, but mine are being licked by the flames?" And Mar Ukba's wife says, "Because when I give, I don't do it with total anonymity. When I give, I know who I'm giving to, and they know from whom they are receiving." So this story pushes back on the idea that the best way to give is to do it with absolutely no knowledge of who is the giver and who is the receiver. And I think that what this story is doing is it is playing on the tension between creating a situation of dependency versus self-reliance. That it asks us the question of, do we rely on the miracle of being taken care of, or do we take on a certain amount of personal responsibility? This week in our Parsha of Miketz, Joseph is faced with interpreting Pharaoh's dreams. And Joseph says to Pharaoh, "You had a dream, which means that for 7 years, Egypt is going to live as a land of plenty, producing a surplus of grain. But after 7 years of plenty, Egypt is going to be followed by 7 years of famine." And what Joseph does is he creates a system where the people of Egypt, during the 7 years of plenty, are going to give all of their grain to the Pharaoh. And Pharaoh's going to store this grain so that in the 7 years to follow, the people can be dependent on Pharaoh to feed them. That in the 7 years of famine, the people can rely upon Pharaoh and Joseph. The people can be sustained by the surplus. That they can lean into this idea of trust and being taken care of. And it's kind of like the manna in the desert. Joseph plays God a little bit, because in the 7 years of famine, Joseph is the one who is giving to the people each day. Just like in the wilderness, in a few parshas from now, when there is no food in the wilderness, every day God is going to give the people the manna. And every day the people have to trust that God is going to sustain them, that God is going to give them what they need. But like the people of Egypt, the Israelites in the wilderness become dependent. Their utmost trust puts them in a state of dependency where they are not personally responsible. They are not taking care of themselves. Their needs are being fulfilled, but they're not empowered. And I go through this sometimes when I'm teaching a class. I finish teaching a class and I say, wow, I did a really great job. I wowed the people. I gave some great information. I answered all the questions in a fantastic way. But then I have to think about, did I empower the people in front of me? Did I allow people's minds to be stretched? Or were they just being dependent upon that which I was teaching? And again, this tension of, are we giving into the trust, or are we fostering a sense of self-reliance and empowerment, comes up in a final story I want to share about how do you spell the word Maccabee. How do you spell the word Maccabee in Hebrew? Professor Isaiah Gaffney had made Aliyah. He is a scholar of the Second Temple period. So Hanukkah is right up his alley. And he was invited when he made Aliyah to Israel to teach a lesson in an elementary school about Hanukkah. And the teacher of the class wanted to lay a little bit of a trap. And she says, Professor Gaffney, how do you spell the word Maccabee? And you might be asking, well, why is that a trap? And it is because if Professor Gaffney spells Maccabee with a chaf in Hebrew, then it stands for Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Adonai, who is like you, God. And it means that you see the story of Hanukkah as a miracle of light. That you see the story of Hanukkah as a miracle of God allowing there to be oil, that God takes care of the people, that no one is like you, God. But option number 2 is that if you spell Maccabee with a kuf, then it stands for the word makab, which means a hammer. A hammer. And what you're saying, if you spell it that way, is that you believe the miracle of Hanukkah is about the might of the people. That the Maccabees were able to rise up against the Greeks, and that the real miracle is that they prevailed against this large army. So Professor Gaffney is stuck. Which way does he go? Does he say it's about a miracle of light or a miracle of might? And he responds to the trick question by saying, well, I spell the word Maccabee with a sigma because I write the word Maccabee in the Greek, because I read the book of Maccabees in the original Greek letters. And that way, Professor Gaffney is able to teach that it's not a holiday of choosing dependency or total trust. It's not a holiday of choosing complete empowerment and 100% self-reliance, but rather Hanukkah is about understanding that it is a miracle of both light, of trust, while also being a miracle of might, courage, and self-reliance. Shabbat Shalom. Chanukah Sameach. May it be a holiday of miracles,